to you. And my God, speaking of the person in the moment with Brett McMurphy, Action Network HQ, who has been more than gracious to be a part of what we've asked him to be. Brett, just saw and just read the tweet you had just a couple of minutes ago. So what a day it's been. Did you ever have a doubt that today would end with what you just tweeted?
You know what? To start, when I went to bed, well, I actually did sleep last night, so I want to confirm that. Right before I went to sleep, I thought Arizona looked promising. It was not done by any means. One person that had been part of the Pac-12 meetings said Bobby Robbins has been very engaged. He's committed to the Pac-12. Quote, if Arizona leaves, Bobby deserves an Oscar. So he will get an Oscar for best leading actor. I was hearing conflicting information. When I got up this morning, I immediately heard that Oregon had turned down an offer from the Big Ten, a low number. And they were basically going to stick it out with the Pac-12. And that meant that Arizona and Arizona State would remain. And so that was until about 10 a.m. That's when the Pac-12 meeting started. I got contacted by a source and said, everything out there, everyone's reporting Pac-12 is still in business. They're statement of conference. That is 1,000% false. Oregon and Washington to the Big 12, to the Big 10, and Arizona and Utah to the Big 12. I heard about that before noon this morning. What I wasn't aware of at that point is Arizona State and their role in this whole thing. Ultimately, I think they wanted to stay with the Pac-12, but when there's nothing left to stick around for, they made the decision to get on board. And then, when Oregon and Washington got out to the Big Ten, then it was just a formality for those other guys to come in. I do think that there were some negotiations there. I don't know specifically any numbers or anything yet regarding the new Big 12 members. But, I'm sure, it would have been, I didn't expect them to only take two of the three and then go find a group of five team. I mean, it makes sense to bring in the four corner schools. And also a lot of people, and I tweeted this, ESPN no longer has the four biggest brands on the West Coast, USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington, all those guys to the Big Ten. And so I think what maybe ESPN and Fox can do is, with so many teams in the Mountain Time Zone with the Big 12 moving forward, move those kickoffs back an hour. And then you get that 10:30 Eastern window. And so I think that's a way to get in that fourth time zone. But yeah, dude, I never would have predicted it would have happened. I did just when you text me and asked me to come on the show, I sent a text out to my sources and said, hey, I'm going on Smoaky at 5:10 Central Time. So team me up about 5 o'clock. They said, we'll see what we can do.
Well, I mean, you're damn right you used us to your advantage, because we've been using you for the last year or two with what you bring to the table, and I mean that, Brett. Thank you very much. Paul?
Yeah, Brett, this is an Oregon and Washington now official to the Big Ten. I mean, that we just had Lyndon Livingstone on the show right before you, and she couldn't confirm or deny anything, but she definitely did not deny anything, obviously, that's moving forward. This was originally thought to maybe be holding at 14. Was it Brett Yormark saying there's one spot for sure available to create this, or did they adapt and react to, well, we can't say no to all four of these schools coming now?
Yeah, well, obviously they had the guarantee for pro rata with ESPN going up to 16. They had the agreement from Fox, not contractually obligated, but agreement from Fox to go to 14. So I think as this progressed, they probably had a conversation with Fox. And again, I don't know if Fox is going to match that, but I do know they will get the same payout, whether that's through other sources or a big pile of money. in one of the closets. I don't have that information right now, but they all will receive the 31.7, or should receive the 31.7 going forward, starting in 2025. If it was only two, like if only two of the three were saying we're coming in, then I think there's a very hard decision there. Do you only take one of them and stay at 14, or do you go to 15 and then pick up a group of five? That's a fascinating decision. I don't know if we'll ever get an answer from anybody with the Big 12, but that would be a great question to ask. But I think ultimately when you have four Power 5 schools coming on board, the four former schools, you have to absolutely take them on when you look around the country and see what else is going on.
Brett, are they done? The Big 12, are they done? We just had Dr. Livingstone. I think it kind of, based on her answer, it feels that way. But now we have, conferences that are moving above 16. The Big 12 is part of one with 16. You feel like this is it for them? And does this position them, whenever the next realignment phase occurs in the next 5 to 7 years, where they're going to be a major player in it?
Yeah, they're done at 16 unless Oklahoma and Texas decide they want to come back. So don't hold your breath on that one. Yeah, I think they're in great position. And again, this is, and people look at the short term. They're like, well, Colorado's coming off, they're 1-11, 3-9, whatever they were. Arizona hasn't won anything in X number of years. This isn't a 2 or 3 year decision, guys. This is a 20-year decision. And, unfortunately, we don't know what's going to happen with the Pac-12. Are they going to merge with the Mountain West? They can't. I think they're going to have to, because they're not going to be able to add enough members. Because even if the Pac-12 wants to add members, who's going to pay $34 million to go join that conference? So what this does is we got one more year of the 14 playoffs, and we got 2 years of the 12-team playoff. So 4 years from now, we start the new 12-team playoff, which, yes, we'll have 12 teams. That's the only thing we know. We don't know how that's going to be formatted. Is it going to be the highest-ranked, 5 highest-ranked conference champions, the 4 highest-ranked conference champions? Will it still be 6? Will it be more enlarges? Will it simply be the highest-ranked teams? We don't know. They've got to figure that out. But believe me, the Big 12, again, Big 10 and SEC, clear-cut 1 and 2, that's never, ever, ever going to change. After that, though, the Big 12 is sitting pretty. And also, oh, by the way, you guys saw the Florida State Board of Trustee meeting the other day. I think it was a sequel to Oppenheimer. But, I mean, that thing, what's going to happen with the ACC? And now if they start losing people to the SEC or to the Big 10, then, yeah, absolutely, the Big 12 is in great position moving forward. But, yeah, I don't see, to get back to your original question, I don't see them adding anybody right now. There's nobody, the cliche, I've said it 100 times with you guys, nobody adds value that's available. But now they're in a great position of strength. They're locked in through 2031. And, hey, who knows what's going to happen in 6 years? If I would have talked to you guys, and I probably did 6 years ago, and I would have said, hey, guess what, in 6 years, Big 12 is going to have 16, OU and Texas are gone, and Big 12 is going to be the number 3 conference in the country, you would say, well, apparently the Action Network doesn't do drug tests, but that's where we're at right now.
Brett, with the Oregon and Washington going to the Big 10 and that kind of shaking out how it did, how did the sentiments of the Big 10 change on giving them a partial share, adding in the travel, and USC in particular not wanting those schools in because they kind of wanted this themselves for a little while?
Yeah, and I thought that the Big 10 would wait because I had been told that, I think others had too, they didn't want to be, viewed as the one that, fired the kill shot on the Pac-12. Although, I mentioned the other day, they started the fire. I think ultimately they just, NBC and CBS and Fox, you've got 3 major networks that want as many marquee games as you can get. So you're adding 2 big brands out west to go with USC and UCLA. And so that's only going to increase the value of your TV deal and bring up more high-profile marquee matchups. It is NFL-like. And they're sitting at 18. I think they'll get to 20. I honestly don't know who. Do they send a lifeline to Stanford and Cal, or do they wait to see what happens in the ACC? I think they get to 20 at some point. I don't think the SEC wants to expand. But if the Big Ten goes to 20, the SEC is not staying at 16 unless nobody can get out of the ACC. Then they would stand down at 16. So I think the Big Ten just looked at, again, this isn't a 1, 2, or 3 year play. This is 5, 10, 20 years down the future. It's kind of like you're playing a pickup game. Do you want to have the first pick and get who's available, or do you want to wait for the last pick, which is kind of where the Pac-12 is, and pick who's left? And then you get down to picking last. There really aren't any good options. So that's why I think the Big Ten decided that we need to go ahead and make this thing work. And one last thing, those guys coming in early in the Big Ten, they will not get full shares, but they still will be making more than they would have made if they stayed behind in the Pac-12.
Okay, so let's, if you don't mind, go back over this. 3 teams are entering. We know Arizona, Arizona State, Utah. That's just a matter of being official. They will be getting the full share like Colorado?
Yes.
Does the exit fee that the Big 12 received from Texas and Oklahoma help get them to that point, or do you feel like that's a different animal?
That is a possibility.
Okay.
Because what I was told about the Big Ten, and I haven't seen the final numbers that have come out, but the Big Ten initially was talking Oregon and Washington in the 30 range, 30 million per school per year. But to actually get that number up to around 40, they were actually, for lack of a better description, almost taking out a loan so that those guys could get up to 40. The other schools, I think the first year will be at 50, and then they'll keep moving up. And then after a few years, then Oregon and Washington will be a full-fledged member, and then they would either pay back that money that they were, quote, loaned, or I talked to one guy that I really trust that knows how these things work, and he thinks they'll just wipe it away and say, yeah, don't worry about it. You don't have to pay that back. You're good. I do not know how the Big 12 is going to do that concerning schools 15 and 16, but I do know that they will get the same number as Colorado.
Okay.
Do you think that Florida State will have disruption partners in the ACC anytime soon, or will they let Florida State kind of float all these different legal balloons and private equity and all these other things out before publicly joining them?
I think I'm fairly confident in saying that, and you can say this and play it back for me, Florida State will be the first one over the wall. Now, whether that happens before August 15th or after August 15th, that's yet to be determined. I do think once they get over the wall and they take a rain of bullets, I think you're going to see some more folks jump over the wall. It's easy to get over the wall, but as you guys know, how do you get out of 12 years worth of grant of rights? So that would be tricky. You can get over the wall, but if you can't get out of the grant of rights, you're not going to be attracted to any conference. Obviously, the Big Ten or the SEC. So that's the tricky part for Florida State and any of the other ACC schools.
Brett, I know you got to go, and I do appreciate it, but now that the Pac-12 is obviously more than wobbly with what's happened, which now could be 5 more teams, or will be 5 more teams, do they remain a Power 5, or if they are, what must they do to get there?
Well, so like I said, we only have 3 years left in the current system. So I honestly don't know the fine print as far as what you must do to remain a autonomy 5 conference. You can't be a conference with 4 members. So, the other thing is, if they go to the Mountain West, you can't suddenly rename the Mountain West to Pac-12 and say, okay, you guys get all the benefits Pac-12 has. And then also, there's a lot of going down the rabbit hole. Who gets the NCAA basketball tournament units and stuff?
Right.
If there's no longer a conference, do those just stick with the school? I'm sure that's something that the college football playoff will have to figure out. The good news is they've got a year to figure that out. But yeah, if they can't get back up to the minimum number for a conference, I believe it's 8. Correct me if I'm wrong. then yeah, they're not going to be an autonomous five conference anymore. And I've kind of always thought this: when we went from the BCS to the 14 playoff, we used to have the 6 automatic qualifying conferences. The Big East was one of those 6. Well, what happened? We go to the 14 playoff, and they decide, you know what? The Big East, you lost Pitt and Syracuse. You're no longer a major conference, so now we're gonna have the autonomous 5 conferences, and the Big East is just out. I mean, the Big East screamed and kicked and did everything to try to keep that from happening, but ultimately they only had 1 vote, and so they were done with. So now, kind of the same format. We're going in 2026 to a new format with the playoff, the end of the current 12-year run. Do we then also cut it back from 5 autonomous or power conferences? Do we cut that back to 4? Do we cut that back to 3? That's to be seen. But yeah, I don't know specifically for the final 2 years of this deal what's going to happen with the Pac-12. But if they don't have 8 members, they're not a conference, so they still can't be that. And then how do you look? The Pac-12 gets a giant slice of the pie, the money from the college football playoff. Where does that money go? Is it distributed between all the other conferences? Will it stick with the power conferences? Will everyone get an equal share? Again, all these things got to be worked out, and certainly being in the Big 12 position, where currently you're number 3 at the table, it carries a lot more power and clout than if you're certainly if you're the Pac-12 or you're in one of the Group 5 conferences.
Brett, before we let you go, I just saw this as you were mentioning the playoff from Stuart Mandel. There's the question of whether the 12-team CFP will still reserve 6 spots for conference champions in 2024. Executive Director Bill Hancock told him it's too soon to say. The CFP Management Committee and the board will discuss the future format when it becomes appropriate. So,
yeah, they're not going to do anything now because they don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. I mean, so doing anything now would be drawing the contract up, in sand, next to the beach. It's going to get washed away in 2 minutes. So that's not surprising. But they do have to figure that out. They've got to figure that out. They've also got to figure out going forward with the 12-team playoff that starts in 4 years. That model. How are they going to do it? Just because we're doing it a certain way in 24 and 25 does not necessarily mean that's what we're going to have moving forward. And in fact, I would almost guarantee it's not going to be the same because the Big Ten and SEC will have the biggest input on what that's going to look like going forward.
Brett, thank you, buddy. I mean, seriously, thank you. Great job. What a roller coaster earlier this morning and what it is now and what it will be this weekend. Thank you so much. We do appreciate it. Make sure you do text me that address, okay? Thank you so much for your time. Have hopefully a relaxing and somewhat great weekend.
I appreciate it. And anytime, guys, good talking to you.
Yes, sir. Brett McMurphy, who, again, leveraged